got some unruly, like you have dogs that can't be tamed because they have too much wolf in them. Wolves don't make good domestic animals because they have too much wild in them. They haven't been domesticated. But you have Negroes who were bred and domesticated. You have Negroes who had the elements of enslavement inserted in their culture, so they taught themselves to be slaves. It's interesting. When you listen to free men and you listen to people who still think like a slave, you can hear the difference if you know what you're listening to.
Let's stay
It's
on
like,
track, Judge Joe Brown. No, great bill. I don't mean to cut you off, Judge Joe Brown. That's a great bill you and Geechee are having. I just for the viewers' purpose, we're in the 1968 Indian Rights Act. Judge Joe Brown is saying that this act, 7 days after King was assassinated, refers to Indians that are already on reservations. I want to move forward a little bit from that, and let's get to 1971, and let's get to this Black Congressional Caucus. So all the work that was done in the 1960s, now we know that it was a military act in 1964 to end segregation, to keep the morale up of the soldiers. And then you get 1965 Voting Rights Act. And then in 1968, after King was assassinated by the federal government and its Marines and its FBI, they turn around and give rights in a government again to a group of people who are already on reservations. Now let's get to 1971 and this Black Caucus. How did this caucus get formed? And is this caucus, according to the theory of operation within the United States government, is it supposed to be the liaison or the communication conduit to deal with Congress and to get laws passed?
Okay, let me explain something very briefly. The Act of 1968 was not conceived and then formulated, drafted, and passed in the 7 days after Martin Luther King got assassinated. It started a long way before, and that was part of what was going on in the 60s. You had a unity between the Black interest, the Indian interest, the Hispanic interest, the Asian interest. It was called Third World. And acting together, you had more power than you did when you acted separately. Now, the Black Caucus, whatever its intent, is no longer a conduit for what you think it would be for. The Black Caucus actually should be construed as the Rainbow Caucus, with the exception of, I think, 5 members of the Black Caucus. Every other member of the Black Caucus is a member of the Liberty Caucus. The Liberty Caucus is the LGBTQIA Congressional Caucus. Everything for the last 35 years that the Black Caucus has introduced as legislation has been gay. Everything they've supported has been gay. And they have been given an interesting opportunity to resign from everybody else and become part of a new voluntary ethnic group, the Rainbow Cult. And what's going on right now that makes politics look so strange is it's not politics, it's a new religion. Now think of Buddhists. Buddhism has no God. You can have any God you want and be a Buddhist, or you don't have to have one. It's a system of philosophy. The Rainbow Cult does not require a deity. It is a sense of philosophy. It stands for a negation of everything that every other religion, pagan, monotheistic, or otherwise, has stood for, which is the development of character traits that have gotten us from cave to condominium. You're on a hunting trip and you got to back your buddies up. Brave, courageous, forthright,
Hold on one second,
willing
Judge.
to
Let's get
sacrifice.
back real quick,
No,
Judge.
I'm getting back. I'm getting back.
You're
So
saying the
what
Black
you
Congressional
have
Caucus,
is
you're saying the Black Congressional
you.
Caucus has turned homosexual. So now
No, it's not homosexual
you saying
because
it passed
all
gay,
homosexuals are not in this rainbow cult.
but it
You
passed
see,
gay
the
bill.
rainbow cult is a coalition that includes pedophiles and
Right.
trannies.
Stay with me
And
though.
the typical pedophile is a drastic enemy of most gay people because they remember getting turned out at 9, 10 years old.
We don't got to go that deep, Judge Joe Brown. Stay with me.
No, I am that deep, but you see,
no,
it's not simple.
what
Okay, this whole trans thing, lesbians tell me that I say, look, I see this cute looking girl, and I go over and find out the girl's got a penis because it's really a boy. I hate the tranny thing. That's what they'll tell you.
I agree. But hold on, Judge. Hold on, respectfully. But I got to bring it back to the listeners, because what you just told, quote unquote, black people is, yes, you have the oldest caucus under the United States government, but it only has written laws for gay people. So where do these black people go? What's the point?
They have resigned being black. They are members of an elective ethnic group. Remember all this hell we get right now about this is natural, you have no choice for it? If you deal with the catechism, you deal with their communion, which I call the 6B thing: unbelt, drop britches, drop boxers, bend over, get butt cheeks spread, and boy bang. Now you remember, you belong to the new ethnic group. You have these rights that the Native Americans are just now exercising, that the Negro is just now exercising. You don't have to put up with this. They teach your cult every day in all these schools where there are rainbows all up and down the hallway, in classrooms. You get an application now. You get something from the government. You get anything online. You look at, you got an iPhone.
Let's take it off gays for a minute, Judge Brown.
No. I'm not taking it off gays because they aren't the focus. All gays don't support this.
The homosexual movement. Let's take it off.
It's not even homosexual. Okay. It's something else. When you have an iPhone, nowadays, if you've got the latest upgrade, it asks you what your pronouns are. You can't do that kind of thing for Protestant religions, Catholics, for Christians, Jews. You can't do it for Islam. You can't do it for Buddhists. You can't do it for Hindus. You can't do it for Confucianism, but you can do it for rainbow all day long, every day. California makes it a felony for a school teacher to tell a parent that their child is trying to convert. The vice presidential candidate, Waltz, signed into law. You got to put tampons in a junior high school boy's bathroom. Tampon Tim. It is now criminal in Michigan for a parent to attempt to keep his minor child from being mutilated and converted. And if the parent attempts to do that, the state can intervene and deprive that parent of parental rights.
I got your argument. What's going on. I got your argument, Judge Brown. Let's go back to this Black Caucus that was set up in 1971. What I'm simply asking for the people that will listen to this live is, are you telling us in an election year that this Black Caucus is not the liaison for Black people to get specific resources?
No, it's not.
Well, then
you think it's black, but what it is it's rainbow.
What's the point of voting?
You get lied to. It's the propaganda.
No, what I'm saying is, I don't want to cut you off, Judge Brown, but what I'm saying is, as somebody who knows engineering, the system is broken when it comes to a particular group of people. You just said a Black Caucus was designed in 1971, the oldest caucus, and it doesn't work for Black people.
Okay, look. Okay, latest thing they claim to have done is the Emmett Till anti-lynch bill. It was introduced in 1997 by Conyers. It was tabled, and then you got Jussie Smollett pulling off that fake lynch thing. Kamala Harris and Cory Booker in the U.S. Senate tried to introduce it as the anti-lynch bill. Still didn't pass. Then things quieted down. She became vice president. And what winds up happening is you get it back in, and it's now the Emmett Till anti-lynch bill. Does it have anything to do with lynching? Not one thing. Because now lynching does not require a mob. It can be one person. It doesn't even require a homicide. It can be a simple beating or a kidnapping. it then becomes a federal crime, a lynching, if it's one guy. How does this work? It interjects for the first time in American legal lexicon sexual orientation. So let's say a guy broke up with his girlfriend. He's feeling trouble. He goes and hangs out with the guys. They go to a club. There's what he thinks is a PYT, pretty young thing, tight dress on, big boobs, hoop earrings, braids down low. And he and she are dancing and exchanging spit over in the shadows. He looks down. He said, wait a minute, man, you got a heart on. What the hell are you? So he busted in the jaw. That now is lynching because he supposedly attacked this person because of their sexual orientation. They front this crap off as the anti-lynch bill. You don't need another law to stop lynching. There ain't none necessary, but it is a dodge to put in sexual orientation for a special category of federal crime for the first time.
So, Judge, just quick question.
Hold on 1 second, Chief Biko. Hold on 1 second.
All right.
Because Judge been running with this gay talk, and I'm asking specific about this Black Caucus. So what he's telling us is the oldest caucus under this government. It's labeled Black. It doesn't work for Black people.
Wait a minute. How about this?
Hold on, Judge Brown. Can people in the chat really understand what this man is saying? So why are you watching the presidential debate at this point? Why? Why? So basically, we can egg the Black Caucus tomorrow because they're useless.
Well, let me give you an example. Reparations. Reparations. The Black Caucus has a reparations committee. Do you know who their chairman is?
Somebody not
the chairman of the Black Caucus's reparations committee is the congressman from the 9th Congressional District of Tennessee here in Memphis, Tennessee. He's gay, he's white, and he's Jewish, and he's in charge of the Black Caucus's reparations committee. He's also chairman of the Liberty Caucus's reparations committee. And 2 weeks after 5 years ago, they had that farce of 2 weeks worth of hearings that the Black Caucus conducted to determine whether they should have a committee formed to study reparations. Not 2 weeks later, without debate, on the first voice vote, they passed the Gay Reparations Committee, chaired by the same congressman, gay, white, Jewish, Steve Cohen from Memphis, Tennessee, who heads the reparations committee for the Black Caucus.
Go ahead,
now, you see any connection?
Stop you. I'm sorry, Judge O'Brien. I didn't mean to stop your bill, and I don't want to be talking over people. I need to take me a break from what this man just said. Chief Biko, go ahead. If you in the chat, you hearing it for yourself. The Black Caucus does not work for quote unquote Black people.
It sounds like the same thing with the NAACP, correct? Like where we have individuals who's supposed to represent a certain sect of people, but as we fast forward, what ends up running them is actually not even the people it's supposed to represent.
Here's the bottom line on the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. All right? What it's set up for is this. At the turn of the 20th century, the Jewish community in this country still had some problems. It's less than, right now, believe it or not, the Jewish population is about 2% of the American population, just 2%. So they wanted some protection. So they came up with the idea that if you can't do it to a Negro, you couldn't do it to a Jew. So they set up the NAACP to advance the interest of the colored people as a front for protecting their own interest.
It makes perfect sense, right? Because in that same time period of history, we're starting to see also the creation of the music industry, some of the and certain individuals just having a stronghold on that and perpetuating other things that we would see in the so-called Black community moving forward in history.
Now, that isn't a complete pictorial list of the Black Caucus, because they got a whole lot of white congressional members of the Congressional Black Caucus.
So let me ask you this real quick, Judge. Because we talked about, nation building and ultimately, how does the United States deal with certain individual groups of people and they are able to seek remedy or to get said remedy for misgrievances that they may experience?
Okay, let me explain the
Hold on, let me
main
just ask you, Judge. Let me just ask this. Is black, the term black, right? We talk about black people, right? The Black Caucus, right? What that represents and who that represents. Under that banner and under that term, is there actually any substance, right, that people can utilizing that terms legally and lawfully to seek remedy or political power under that term?
There's no such thing as a legal status of black, no such as Negro. What those are is just euphemisms that happen to be the current descriptive word. Now, anybody been in the Army? Maybe a parent, grandparent has. World War I, they called American soldiers doughboys. World War II, they called them GIs, for government equipped. Vietnam, they called them grunts. All the same thing. The words mean the same, but they're different words. Black, colored, Negro, African American, Afro American, they're all referring to the same group. It's a euphemism.
So, Judge, with that being said, why do you think majority of people that look like us identify as black if the people that's supposed to represent it that we have on this screen here don't represent them? Why not go back to the beginning of the discussion and claim your bloodline lineage instead? Why do you think it's such a hard thing to wrap your mind around as far as our group of people?
Okay. It takes 6 days for a fad to start in the United States now with social media and the means of communication. About 7 years ago, some of us decided collectively we were going to get away from African American and go back to black. We started using it. Now everybody's saying black. 5, 6 years ago, it was African American. Jesse Jackson did not start African American. It just came back in somewhere around the late 1970s, early 1980s. He took advantage of it. But before that, it had been colored, Negro. It became black. It became, in 18 months, Afro American. Then it went back to black interchangeably with Afro American. And it stayed that way until the end of the 70s. And then it went to African American, and now it's drifted black in the last 6 years to black again. And basically, there were a handful of us that pushed the use of the term black. So if you're 22 now, in other words, you were 15 when this started. If you're 29, you were 22 when this started. It looks like a long development. There's a thing about life. The closer it gets to the end, the more it's like a roll of toilet paper, the faster it runs out. So 6 years, 5 years is no time for somebody over 50. For somebody who's 25, that's a long period of time. That's a fifth of your life.
Let me ask you a question real quick, Judge.
Go ahead.
Being a part of that group that started to use that term black again, do you think it was a mistake knowing that that term and the usage of it gives implications of political power or coming together politically, right? And being able to be represented politically, even though, as we know, that term doesn't have any basis or backing or even unification in that term, because many of people have fell under that banner of black and have not yet have the history of so-called black people in America, i.e. slavery. We have East Indians who are considered black. You spoke about coolies. You spoke, right? Octoroons, quandaroons. At any given time, right, that we're looking at in history, there's a wealth of different people from different origins who fall under that black banner. Now, I'm talking about moving forward for our people, right? Understanding once you know better, you do better, right? would you say, from your opinion, the use of the term black was a mistake, considering looking at the results today? Go ahead.
No, it's not. It has no difference. See, it has no impact. Your generation keeps thinking of labels because over the last 55 years, there's been a concerted campaign to get people to focus on irrelevancies, on labels, and on appearances rather than on essences. It doesn't make any difference what you call yourself. Supposing somebody Chinese was referring to you, how would he describe you? Does that change what you are because it's in Mandarin Chinese? Or if somebody was in Nigeria and they were speaking Yoruba, Igbo, or whatever it might be, does that change what you are because they use a different word for it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Negro is black in Spanish, but if you talk about those Negroes over there and people can see what you're talking about, or those black folk over there, or those Noir over there, and you're using French, you get the idea. We're talking about that group. What does that group choose to call itself? It doesn't change their nature. It doesn't change their essence. But in today's parlance, you're supposed to focus on the superficiality of a label or an appearance rather than the essence.
Well, I think that's the issue, Judge, right? When everyone else in today's modern time, including all those with 47 pronouns, right, has everyone else around them have to acknowledge, right, what they say they would like to be called, correct? So now when we're talking about our people, right, and our people are getting away from terms and colors that don't accurately describe us. Judge, you got on a black shirt currently right there. Nothing about you is black. What most likely is about you is your Choctaw ancestry, right? So what happens is, right, actual Indian like yourself, right, who has a blood birthright to citizenship of its nation, right, now comes under the banner of black, right, and becomes now a citizen of another nation that hasn't even incorporated this term into their legal jargon at all.
Well, okay, both of my grandfathers, paternal and maternal, are darker than anybody that's on this screen, or they were before they died. I get dark red brown when I get out in the sun a lot, not sunburn red, dark brown red. And that's the Native American part coming out. But bottom line is what I call myself has nothing to do with my self-evaluation. It just happens to be a label.
But does it have something to do with how you're classified legally
It
in law
doesn't make any difference.
in America?
See, in other words, the classification becomes a matter of convenience. If you look at a federal form, the first block says Hispanic, non-Hispanic. It's a game they're playing on you. See, if you say non-Hispanic, they want to know if you are white, Caucasian, black, or African American, then Pacific Rim or Pacific Islander, et cetera, and then they go through the categories. If you go to Hispanic, you don't have to answer that, though there are white or Caucasian people who speak a Latin language as their native language. There are blacks or Africans or African Caribs or whatever it may be who speak Hispanic languages. I have a stepmother. She's dead now. My father married her, and she's from the Philippines, and she's classified or was classified as Hispanic because her native language was Espanol, but she has slant eyes, sure enough, mostly Chinese with a bit of Japanese in her. So, but she's classified as Hispanic. It's a game where you make the size of this ethnic group a lot bigger than it actually is because of your classification. Now,
is that how we stay 13% of the population for the last how many ever when they put into the data? And
yeah, but you see, you got other people coming in here. Like right when I first got to Memphis 50 some years ago, you very seldom saw anybody that was Latino.
Hold on one second, Judge Brown. Hold on one second, if you don't mind. Chief Biko, please get your question in. because I want to ask a question doubling up on what Geechee just said to drill down. Go ahead, Chief Eco. No,
I just wanted to
my
ask.
bad, Judge.
I just wanted to ask the question because if what we're called doesn't matter, then how can, on one hand, we get mad at, example, Kamala Harris for claiming Black if it doesn't really matter? Like, we have to have a standard or a definition that the actual American gives Congress, or like you said, we can have an open door for anybody can just run in and claim that particular identity.
Well, that's exactly what's happening. She's claiming to be Black because she's got what appears to be a Black paint job, but it's not Imran, it's lacquer that's making her Black. In other words, what gives her the dark complexion is because she's an Aryan, the same Aryan that the Germans were claiming were the master race. There are Aryans, but they look just like her. But the Germans lied and said they're blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and the lie was told long and loud, and everybody thinks of Aryans as blonde-haired, blue-eyed from the far north, instead of swarthy, dark-haired, dark-eyed from the Indus River Valley, which is India.
Let me ask you a different way.
She has the color.
Let me ask you a different way.
The point is, she has none of the legacy. She doesn't have anybody that is an Indian. She doesn't have anybody that was brought over on the boat. She has none of these connections. She doesn't have a mother, a father who was even an immigrant to America. She has two parents who were visitors on temporary academic visas, but nobody was attempting to be a resident here long term or become a migrant or become a citizen of the United States. She is the newbie. So she has no grandmother, grandfather, aunt, uncle, great-grandfather, or anybody with any attachment to American soil. Not one.
Let me ask it this way, Judge Joe Brown. Let me ask it this way. The numbers tell the story. Let me put it this way. For everybody listening, let's keep it real simple. We got an expense sheet. We got a profit and loss statement, Judge Joe Brown. On that expense sheet, we got a Hispanic caucus, a Black caucus, an Asian caucus, and a Pacific Islander caucus. If what we call ourselves doesn't matter or we're not specifically recognized, how do we ever get allocated specific resources? What's your answer?
The point of the exercise is the way the Constitution is currently interpreted. You can't get any because you're Black. You get some because of your neutral status.
Judge Joe Brown, hold on 1 second. What you just said, I just gave an example to the listeners. There's 5 caucuses that I'm aware of. There may be more. They're on the expense sheet of the federal government. This group called Black never gets anything specific. And you're saying, Judge Joe Brown, it doesn't matter that we don't have, it's almost like going into business and you don't have a name that you're going to file to put your LLC or your S Corp under. Like, this doesn't make sense.
Here's the thing. The Black Caucus is essentially the Rainbow Caucus.
Come on, man.
It is. Damn near every one of them is a practitioner. It doesn't really make any difference. Get your freak on in your bedrooms. That's your business. But the point of the exercise is they use the work, the long legacy that has been left by Black Americans, Indians, who have either suffered at the hands of or made the nation. And what they're doing is they're relying upon that as camouflage for what they're really up to, which is a negation. They want to get rid of bravery, courage, duty, honor, responsibility, consequence, accountability, making where you live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic opportunity, sense of purpose, becoming creatures of public peace, dignity, and order. They want to get rid of that, and they want no accountability. They want no guilt, no shame. Do whatever you want to do. You're answerable to nobody but yourself. You have no responsibilities. You're entitled to being taken care of by any and all. So you just get to be a child. Somebody will protect you, disarm the public, restrict free speech so that nothing said that counters your position is allowed. See, this is
what
a
do we need to do?
negation of character.
What
That character that got us from cave to condo. They
Judge
want to get
Brown,
rid of it.
what do we need to do? Going back to the math, what do we need to do to get on the expense sheet to get specific resources from this government? Can you quick search white on this 1866 Civil Rights Act real quick, Chief Biko? Because what you're telling us, so they can be specific for white people. This is the 1866 Civil Rights Act. The federal government recognized white citizens. But what you're telling us is it doesn't matter if it doesn't recognize black citizens, but it does.
It doesn't.
Because
they can't recognize white citizens anymore. See, the Constitution is currently interpreted and as buttressed by Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, and a number of other things and precedents. You cannot specify anything that is particular to one particular group. You have to make it so that it does not allow discrimination against a group, but it can't favor it.
Is this still good law?
Remedial, but you can't favor it.
Is this still good law? Is this still good law, Judge Joe Brown? Has this been amended where they took the white off citizens?
That doesn't count anymore. That's not in there. That's not good law now. That's been superseded by a number of things. But basically, you cannot discriminate against someone for race, color, national origin, religion, age, infirmity, medical condition, in other words, or your sex. Now, they have attempted to modify that by using some of the precepts that were established over long years to prevent discrimination against somebody because of their race or color. They've been modifying that, thanks to the Black Caucus, to include sexual orientation, which is an option. And if you don't believe that, here's the thing. Gay folk, the last I checked, don't rape every time they have sex with somebody. It's consensual. So if it's consensual, it's a choice. It's an election to do it or not do it. And if you can elect not to do it, irrespective of what you choose or wish to do, or if you do the thing you're compelled to do, you don't have to do it. Catholic priests and nuns are supposed to be celibate, not have any at all. Not saying
are gays on the expense sheet of the federal government to get allocated specific?
Yes, they are. They've got a Gay Reparations Act.
So if they can
one
get
that was passed 5 years ago, headed by the Black Caucus.
Is this going over your head? Is this going over your head? What I'm saying right now?
I got a question. Now, in that Reparations Act, there is specific verbiage to give them restitution. I'm assuming for a misgrievance, correct? Of some
well,
sort.
Here's what it is. Basically, what the thing starts off being is because gay married couples were discriminated against, they set up a paltry $58 million fund, which is renewable because it's open-ended, to compensate reparations compensation to gay couples who were denied insurance benefits. It's open-ended, no telling how much it'll wind up costing, but it's titled officially the Gay Reparations Act. The Black Caucus,
based off discrimination for not being able to be married. So isn't discrimination similar to anti-miscegenation? Wouldn't certain individuals have some type of grievance with anti-miscegenation laws that were put on the books and their inability to get married and or treated or discriminated against based off their race? Isn't that a similar basis for reparation for Black folk?
Sure, but the problem is how you're going to get it unless there's a legislative act. You would expect the Black Caucus to introduce a Reparations Act, but have they? No. See, you can't sue anybody under American law.
Judge Joe Brown, respectfully. Well, and salute to you because you've been dropping some gems. Hopefully this is a man, but Judge Joe Brown, this is not hard. We're problem solvers. You're a
Yeah,
professional.
well, but the problem is
Hear
this.
me out, hear me out. If it doesn't matter what we're called, and we're never going to be on the expense sheet specifically allocated to, but other groups are, i.e. gays, is what you've been running with for the last like 45 minutes. How do we fix this problem as quote unquote Black people with a Black caucus? How do we fix it where we get specific resources under the name American? What do we
Stop
need?
electing the treasonous clowns to the offices. They aren't representing you. Look up their voting records. If they are not voting for stuff that benefits the people that they look like, don't vote for them. And you don't belong to one party. You're not slaves. You do not belong on that plantation. Now, here's what I'm saying. We can't sue because, first off, enslavement is a personal wrong against somebody. It's a tort. Every state in the Union and within the United States has a 1, 2, or 3 year statute of limitations. It's been a long time since that statute of limitations ran. If the perpetrator of a personal wrong dies, the action dies with him unless there's a wrongful death. And then there's so many years, 1, 2, or 3, depending upon the state, where an action can be filed to get compensation for it. The time limit's long run. Can you sue the government? Not unless they give you permission, because of the thing called the sovereign immunity. You cannot sue the federal government, a state government, a county government, or a municipal government without their permission. Now, how do you get that?
Judge, can the federal government, state government, and all these other forms of government commit genocide on the people, and there will be no grievance based upon what you just said?
Not unless they allow it. And then who's going to gainsay them if they're powerful enough to do it? See, there's power.
So hold on.
One more thing I want
to add. What's the difference between that and slavery, right? Because what you're just telling me basically is, right, the government or those who are the leaders, right, at any given time could deem that breaking said constitutional laws, right, or that they supposedly uphold, right, breaking those laws could be for the best of the United States, right? And thus forth, the only remedy to that for a citizen, right, which would be if they allow you to get some type of restitution.
Yeah, that's it. Because Johnny Cochran and I knew each other, and sometimes we call each other up on the phone and talk about this stuff. He had some ideas, I had some ideas. I have a few thoughts on how you might be able to get around it, but I doubt they'll succeed. They're just thoughts about it. But the way to get this is through a legislative enablement and appropriations act. In other words, somebody pass a law that gets through Congress, and Congress is the Senate and the House, and also Congress approve the money payouts. And that has to be signed off on by the president. The president can't sign anything and get it in effect. And then it has to survive legal attack by probably multiple states and get through the court system. And at that point, you might have reparations. Now, it has to be an enablement and appropriations act, and there has to be the money available. Now, if you talked about $500,000, say $500,000 for all of the identifiable people that might be able to be hooked up with slavery so that they are entitled to reparations because they actually have a family connection, ancestral connection, a legacy of sufferance at slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, segregation, etc. Well, you need an act of Congress and you need the money. And if you say gave someone $500,000, each person who was impacted, just $500,000, not the 9 million they were talking about in San Francisco, with the people identifiably in the group of those who actually have a legacy that is connected with slavery as suffering from it, that $500,000 translates out somewhere around 14 to 15 trillion dollars. The last figures I've seen for the gross income of the United States of America that the government had available to it, the gross amount was $19.4 trillion for 2017. So nobody can operate on the business of giving away 3/4 of anybody's income at one time. Cash on the barrelhead. It doesn't work.
So, Judge, real quick, what you just explained sounded like a corporate infrastructure. Is the United States of America a corporation?
No, it's not. But corporations are based on the United States government. In fact, I'll be glad to break that down. Article 1 that we touched on, we didn't
hold on
mention.
1 second, Judge. But before you go there, respectfully, before you go there, let's go back to your reparations scenario, but let's take money off the table and let's talk about people who were run out of towns. Why not? Why can't those people who were run out of towns during the Great Migration, why can't they get their towns back?
Because they're dead.
Okay, but they got family, they got lineage.
Well, you have wrong. Well, the action doesn't survive the deceased.
Boy, look at here. They got it.
That's American law.
Well,
so there's no actual remedy for like birthright stealing, according to law.
No.
So that's legal, technically,
There's no such thing as birthright stealing. That's not a category of tortious activity, which would create an action, and it's certainly not statutory.
So, Judge, I have a question.
No basis or grounds for it, dude, at all.
As I said, it has to be somebody changes the law. So that requires a legislative act, and once the law is changed, it has to be paid for. That's an appropriations act, which is usually combined with an enablement act. Under Article 1 of the Constitution, that's the function of the U.S. Congress, which shall have 2 chambers, the House and the Senate. And also you have electors. Now, let's lead from that into the thing about, is the U.S. government a corporation or a business?
I just want to be clear. You just said that it's illegal to give reparations.
I didn't say it's illegal. There's just no legal basis for it. There's a difference.
Wow.
Got you.
No
so all the
with all the towns that's been destroyed and there's no legal basis.
Well, what I'm hearing, alligator, is that nobody has articulated it in the proper format. Thus forth, you can't bring it to, like, there's no basis for it, right? There's not a question that they can be described in law and a remedy for it set for that.
Yeah, let me put it this way. If somebody comes in and out of malice destroys your house, that's actionable. But guess what? You have to file an action to recover within the statute of limitations, which, considering that it's called a tort or a civil wrong, depending upon the state or whether it's within the United States province, as a federal government, you have 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. If you don't file something within that time, you lose it. You get an automobile accident, depending upon your states, you got 1 year, 2 years to file it. You don't, you lose it.
But there is no statute of limitations on murder, correct?
Well, no, but the point is it actionable? Who are you going to get the money from? And the person that commits the murder has to still be alive.
Wow.
What are you going to do? Now, execute the corpse?
Let me ask you a question, Judge. If their estate still exists, is that the same as them being alive?
No, it's not. It isn't. Okay. And you still have the time thing. Did you file this action, which is caught up in this whole thing with civil wrong? Did you file it within the applicable statute of limitations? And therein lies the rub. Also, if you try to sue a government, you can't, because there's a thing called sovereign immunity. Otherwise, any individual could close down the government. He has to have standing to sue, and there has to be an allowance of his lawsuit.
Can another government sue the government?
A state can sue another state, and it goes immediately to the Supreme Court. A state can file an action against the combined conglomerate of sovereign entities that consist of the United States or the United Nations of America. Yes.
Can a tribal nation sue the United States?
If there is a treaty allegation, if you're talking about a foreign entity, which is what Indian nations are, then it becomes a matter of what do the treaties say.
So
Yes,
the only
it does,
reason that
Brown.
they're sovereign is because they are a foreign entity outside of said United States.
Yes. And what is the treaty obligation? And you still have the thing here, power.
But they still are subservient to the United States.
It goes this way. Who can vest the most immediate consequence? And when Native Americans had a whole frontier and they could go on the warpath, take scalps, burn down homesteads, kill the cattle, you got a lot of power. Maybe you can't win the war, but you can damn sure make it inconvenient until somebody says this is becoming a big thorn in everybody's backside. We need to do something about it.
Not to cut you off there, Judge, but the question, because you said it goes back to power. So just kind of circling back, because I know you said it can't be specific to a group, and we already done identified that the LGBTQ community has one. So they must have some power. And we also have this document here that came out recently in 2021, where they passed the COVID hate crime, which is specifically for Asians. So is that because they, one, have power? And how do we get the same thing for our group, which is being classified as Black?
Your Black Caucus is supposed to introduce that, but they won't.
So let me ask a question, Judge Joe Brown, based on what Chief Biko just said. Here we can see, can you scroll down, Chief Biko, where he can see Asian? So we can clearly see, Judge Joe Brown, that the federal government has a specific line item on their expense for Asians. You've already made it clear to us that Black is not on the expense sheet, and we can't get anything specific, but gays are getting stuff specific. Asians.
Well, here's the thing. Will it stand? Nobody's challenged it. Remember, we once had affirmative action, but it got challenged and it's not race neutral. So over the last 50 years, starting with Bakke, which by the way was set up with some Black students at Berkeley Medical School. They wanted to get in. They didn't want a neutral standard applied to them because they couldn't get in. They couldn't get the neutral standard by showing that there were other factors that indicated that they could succeed because there was no adversity to their existence. They just happened to be Black. So they reached an agreement with the admissions and the faculty at Berkeley Medical School. Bakke was going to be the beneficiary because he was setting himself up to be the plaintiff, and the school and the system took a dive so they could end it. And some Negroes got into medical school and Black folk got cut off slowly but surely, strangled about it over the next 50 years. By the way, the opinion that Justice Roberts wrote is exactly like we wrote as Black students at UCLA in 1966 and 67 to start affirmative action. As did other Black students around the country. It was race neutral. We told those clowns you can't base it on race because you will screw it up. You can make it race neutral, where although it is technically neutral, it has the greatest impact on the circumstances of Black folk. So just by the nature of what we dealt with.
What is Asian,
Now,
Judge Joe Brown?
that's what
Is
happened.
Asian?
We don't have anybody introducing anything for us.
But is
Where is the
Asian
proposed
race neutral?
legislation that would come out of the Black Caucus?
Is
It
Asian,
isn't.
is Asian race neutral, Judge Joe Brown? Respectfully, is
Asian, see, it doesn't have to be race neutral when it is remedial. Even the Supreme Court says that. You can't favor anybody, but you can protect them. The Civil Rights Act, the Employment Act, Title VII, says there shall be no discrimination based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, age, or medical condition. Now, if you are talking about somebody's discriminated against because they're Asian, you're saying there's a particular need and we need to protect the Asians. If you want to style it something else, it's open to attack. But right now, nobody's attacked it. You don't have groups attacking it, but you got a lot of groups attacking the particularity of favoring somebody who's Black. Nothing is wrong under the current interpretations of American law with saying you can't do this to Black people. The problem comes in when you start saying what you have to do it for, who you do it for, rather than you can't do it against.
all right. So I'm gonna raise my hand. And I want you to talk to me like I'm a 3-year-old, Judge Joe Brown. We're looking at a screen and we see that the Asian American got specific protection for murders that happened in Atlanta, Georgia during the pandemic.
Yeah, here's the thing.
Why,
Let me put it to you.
why can't we have a Black American, some type of act that comes through Congress? Why can't it just be
the Civil Rights Act?
It's irrelevant. It's just bullshit. Because wait a minute. Everything that they said you can't do to Asians is also generally against the law. Now, if I'm explaining it to a kid, I'd explain it this way.
okay?
They can't take your candy from you, but you can't make somebody give you candy. You get the difference? I got a candy bar. It's wrong to take my candy bar. But on the other hand, I don't have to give you one.
Right.
You
Unless there's some type of legislation that allocates that there's a specific budget to go towards a specific,
in other words, it has to be this way. Because of something systemic, your candy bar got snatched. So we're going to make you whole by giving you your candy bar back.
Right. So let me ask you a question real quick. The term Black and the Black Caucus, you says the Black Caucus has to introduce certain legislation and things in order for it to really have any basis. So going back to that term, right, as you said, you were one of the ones that was instrumental in helping bring that term back, right, at a certain point in time and being as political power. Would you say, looking back in retrospect now, that you potentially created and helped influence a term that now Kamala Harris and other individuals who are not of said, what that represents, now they hide under that mask of Black?
But the point is, she's not Black by the definitions concerned. She's Hindu. She has in her background the following: Irish.
As you were creating that term, sir, right? Or that term was.
But hold on. She has in her background genetically Irish, Caucasian, and she has Aryan Caucasian. Doesn't have any recent African ancestry. Now, the fact that she is swarthy is typical of Aryans. Aryans were lied about and said to be blonde-haired and blue-eyed. That's Aryan Nation, Aryan Brotherhood, Nazi Party, the Aryans. They're talking about the same people that look like Kamala Harris. Her mother was a Tamil Hindu, dark skin. Now, they're classified as Caucasians. If you go to Australia, their Aboriginals are as dark as any American black, but they're
If you bring them,
classified
they
as
would be
Caucasian.
Negroes, right? If hold on,
What?
but if we took those people that you're speaking of and put them in 1958 or 60, right? These people are considered and classified the same as Black Americans who had
No, they're
slavery.
not. They're not.
They're
There's
not.
a
Oh,
distinction.
hold on, they're
I
not.
knew
Hold on, they're
people.
not considered
Look, I
colored.
personally am acquainted with people who did this. It was interesting as some experiments in the 1950s and early 1960s. They had people who studied African languages, principally Yoruba or Igbo, and they dressed up as Africans and they were dark skinned. They got absolutely no problems in the South because they had nothing to do with slavery. They were looked at as free people. The onus that we face as a race has to do with our association with being slaves. Africans look down on us for being slaves. Indians look down on the slaves for being slaves. Irish look down on the slaves for being slaves. Scotsmen, English, French, everybody looks down on slaves.
Well, hold on, Judge. Everybody you just named at some point in history were slaves, correct?
Sure. And
Okay,
guess
hold on.
what?
That don't go together then, Judge. Hold on.
No, but guess
hold
what?
hold on, Judge. Just listen. All of these people you just described, when we talking about in the inception of America, all of them were slaves. The Irish.
Yes.
Like, hold on. So, but these same people, you telling us, right? They're looking down on our people when at the same time our people is allegedly going through slavery. Guess what, Judge? All of these people are going through slavery in antebellum America.
Yeah, but the difference is there's a difference. They didn't require the 1863 Emancipation Proclamation that freed the slaves in the states in rebellion. They didn't require the 13th Amendment that ended slavery and involuntary servitude in the United States. They didn't require the 14th and 15th Amendments.
Yeah. Hold on. Was that race-based, Judge? Or was slavery?
It doesn't make any difference what it is. Look at what they did that we did not do.
Look, we're talking about a specific people that have a lineage that's based in this.
No, that's got nothing to do with it. Here's what it's got everything to do with it. We never had a war with the United States of America, nor did we have anybody that we were connected with in a foreign place who had a war with the United States of America.
So what was the Gullah Wars, Judge?
That was a scrimmage. That was just somewhere in the outskirts. That
Hold
was
on, Judge. Scrimmage, wait, a scrimmage that almost brought America to the brink of debt, and it was
didn't bring it to the brink of anything.
Hold on, Judge.
There were several hundred, maybe 1,000 casualties.
Hold on, Judge. Did the Gullah Wars last over 100 years?
Yeah, it was a skirmish.
Okay, what war, Judge? Hold on. What war that lasts 100 years? Okay, that is not gonna bring a nation to the brink of debt.
It's not bringing the nation to the brink of anything.
So America was able to fight for 100 years with Indians or so-called black folks and still at the time enslave millions of them, as well as enslave other Europeans, East Indians, Africans, and other people from the earth, correct?
Can y'all hold on for 1 second?
There is a certain category, generally genetically determinable.
Hold on 1 second, Judge Joe Brown. Hold on 1 second for me, Judge Joe Brown, respectfully, because y'all going back and forth, and it's not good for the listener right now. What we do know at this point, because right now we're just going around because we're emotional about what we're hearing from Judge Joe Brown, but we've shown Judge Joe Brown and the listeners documents that say white citizens, documents that say Asian citizens. And Judge Joe Brown has said that gays specifically get resources. What Judge Joe Brown is respectfully telling us is that there's this one group of people that even if you got on a Dawes roll by blood and you know who you are by blood, if you went through reclassification and had to go through segregation and all of that, there's no remedy for you. And I respect you, Judge Joe Brown, for just coming straight up the middle this last 45 minutes and letting people know that you're not going to get remedy from your Black caucus and being called Black, because they're going to say it's racial, even though we know Asians can get it and gays can get it. So what you're really telling us is it's a lose-lose game. There's no way to fix this system because the component that we are, it wasn't designed to be in this system. It just wasn't.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Let me tell you what I am saying. If you're Asian, you had Chosin Reservoir, you had Korea, you had Pearl Harbor, you had Kamikaze, you had Bonsai, you have karate, you have Bushido, you have samurai. If you're German, you've got Battle of the Bulls, you got Tiger tanks, Panther tanks, you got the Wehrmacht, you've got the Luftwaffe, you've got Baron von Richthofen, you've got all of these things. If you're French, you have knights in armor, you've got England, you got these badasses with Robin Hood and everything else. What do you have if you're Black folk? Maybe you have the Native Americans, but the Native Americans have a hell of a lot better circumstances in one sense than descendants of slaves. Why? Because the American descendants of slaves have never thrown down and had a knockdown, drag out fight with the white folk. Now, granted, at the end of the Civil War, the rebellion, 1/3 of the Union Army was Black, Negro, colored, whatever you want to call it. And they were what was necessary to win that war. But we haven't thrown down. We haven't had any Nigerians or Igbo or Kenyans or anybody take on the U.S. government. The Japanese that live here didn't, but they had their native land, Japan. The Chinese who live here, they had coolies, they got jacked around. But when America ran into those Chinese in Korea, it scared the hell out of them. See, who here that it looks like anybody that would be included in the label Black has that? And you can even take the Caribbeans. They had the Maroons. They didn't need to be emancipated. They got free. You got Haiti, Toussaint Louverture. He went and took on Napoleon's guys and did a damn good job running them out. See, we've got all kinds of things, but we've never fought anybody. And they name places and trains and things after Indians, but they don't name anything except boulevards after Martin Luther King and schools out of after Booker T. Washington. And if you want to get a handle on Booker T. Washington, just think what you were not doing to get white folk in every southern town to name a school after you 110, 120 years ago.
So what you're really telling us, Judge Joe Brown and Chief Blackcoat, I want to get your input on what he just said, because basically Judge Joe Brown is saying you got to go outside and knock that person out that's on your bike. It's your bike. Stop trying to call the police. Stop trying to go to court and go through the civil process to get your bike back. Go take your bike back and just go knock them out and get on your bike and go on down the street to the 7-Eleven.
I'll say this one thing again. I said it earlier. I went through 60,000 pages of the congressional record. There were maybe 5 pages in there that talked about the civil rights activities and nonviolent demonstrations. The rest of it was concerned about burn, baby, burn.
Chief Blackcoat, based on what he's saying right now, he's basically saying you got to take it back. Black folks ain't never took it back.
There you go.
And there it is. I mean, but he keeps saying it. We're here on this channel trying to figure out who is Black. Now you've explained that Black is this whole group of people that are gay, got nothing to do with us. So we running around here with the mindset of Black, cool, calm, and collected. We're trying to figure out how do we get it back. You stand on business about the American and stop asking the government to give you all of this. We could talk all day about what happened, what went down. We know the truth. We broke it down already, and I like how Geechee is baiting them into these certain questions to try to just say like who the American is, which is us. But yeah, the same play that of how the European is walking around calling themselves the American right now. Just took he explained it best with the candy analogy. I don't gotta give you no. You took it, but I ain't gotta give it to you. So now we gotta have that same mental. Take the candy back. Take being back to America. And yeah, the only way you get that is you don't play no games with Black Caucus or Senate or whatever structure that they run now. You take it back, Bob. Taking it back.
Let me ask a question. This may be unpopular, but how many members of the Black Caucus are Republican?
Good question, Judge.
Damn near none. So
Wow.
we've been voting for these same Democrats, and they're the only Democrats outside of, say, the president that we get a chance to help select. We've been putting them in since 1970.
Wow.
They haven't done a damn thing for us. So here's the thing. If no matter what I don't do for you, I get your support, why should I do any damn thing for you if I can guarantee myself I'll get your support?
You got to teach them how to treat you. Let me ask you this, since you're going there. I hope you appreciate how we are able to pull up these laws and stuff. Why are these college graduate politicians, why are they not doing what we're doing with you on this live? Why are they not reading through the records, trying to figure out the history and the timeline?
Because they are. But the point is, they're bamboozling everybody. They're running a con game as to what they're doing. See, I have to go back to this last point. If no matter what I don't do for you, I get your vote, I have absolutely no incentive to do a damn thing for you. Meanwhile, over here, John Doe, no matter what he tries to do for you, he can't get your support. He winds up with no incentive to do a damn thing for you either. So the party of the slave owners, which was founded the second decade of the 19th century to protect and spread slavery, still controls those descendants of slaves. The party that in 1851 was chartered with the specific purpose of ending slavery, they can't get anything from the ex-slaves. They used to. Up until 1960, damn near every Black person in America voted Republican, except on the national level because of what FDR did about putting people back to work. And Harry Truman signing 1981 that integrated the armed services. Kennedy, see, Kennedy got a lot of Black folk. He was the Democratic nominee for president, but every racist redneck sheriff in the South was a Democrat. So their presidential candidate just called up and said, hey, you know, my daddy, he was a gangster, big time gangster, Irish gangster. So what am I doing? I'm a Democrat. I'm your candidate for president. You good and damn well better do what I tell you. Back off this Martin Luther King. And the Democratic sheriffs in the South, racist as they were, listened to their Democratic candidate for president, whose father made a lot of money running Negroes off of the docks and out of the warehouses in Boston. And Negroes flocked to the Democratic Party. And then when LBJ came in and became great white daddy in the White House, oh God, the mint. And when they came up with the Civil Rights Act, 1967, 68, I mean, the voting rights and the amendments and, you know, war on poverty, oh, that was right there. Now the slave party owned them some Negroes. But you see, what was going on is 100 years before, they had put this culture of slavery in the minds of Black folks, so it became part of their culture. And the Negroes raised themselves as slaves. They taught themselves in acculturating and socializing themselves what it meant and how to be slaves, and didn't even realize it. So 120 years later, 130 years later, it was easy for the Democrats to reassert control over their slaves that they had put slavery in the culture of. And here we are now. Black Caucus, we've had them in for 35, 40, 50 years, and they haven't done a damn thing for their people.
So let me ask you a question, Judge, specifically about that. So there is a certain sect of so-called Black folks in America, right, who didn't need the Black Caucus, or at least work with the Black Caucus to be identified, recognized, and to have a specific budget set aside for their overall preservation. Who I'm speaking about is the Gullah Geechee, right? So I wanted to get your opinion, because in 2001, right, Queen Quet was able to get a congressional act ultimately to preserve and help preserve and protect the lands historically of these people, and bestow a certain level of autonomy with these said specific people. So is that an example, right, where Black folks have been able to go through Congress, right, go through certain the avenues in which you described, and able to seek remedy? Are you familiar with this tribe of people? And
there was a lot of consequence going on too. They took lives and they exerted power. And there's one little thing, they took the wives and children into custody, trying to impact them, and they went and kidnapped some of the family of some of the sheriffs and held them. So that was a standoff. That's an exercise in power.
So specifically, it's the same sentiment in which you said again, right? Those who exercise specific powers and or, bestowed inalienable rights by their creator and understand that, they seem to be able to get some type of remedy.
Yes.
Those who continue to remain in the victim mentality will always seem to be in that mentality or in that status in this legislative procedure court. Okay, go ahead.
It's like this. There's a small guy and a big guy who's trying to bully him. If the small guy's got a lot of nerve, he busts the bully right in his mouth, split his lip. Bully may beat his butt, but he got a busted lip. He doesn't want another busted lip. So if he knows this guy has got this ongoing courage, he either kills him or bats